July 2nd, 2025. A Ukrainian unit was preparing to launch Vilkha-M missiles at a Russian weapons depot. But just seconds later, they detected electromagnetic emissions from a Russian Zoopark-1M radar less than 40 kilometers away. A clear sign that they had been located. A deadly barrage of Smerch rockets was fired toward their position. What was meant to be a precise operation turned into a race against time. The team had only 6 minutes to launch their missiles and escape with their lives, while Russian Tor M2 defense systems were already prepared to intercept. As the seconds passed, the Ukrainian team was positioned near Pokrovsk. The target was a massive ammunition depot in Kartitsk, a key element in keeping the Russian army supplied in the region. Its destruction would directly weaken the ability to continue the offensive in Donetsk. About 15 minutes earlier, the Ukrainians had fired some test rockets at secondary targets in order to create a distraction. But this move immediately triggered an alert in the Zoopark-1 radar, a Russian counter-battery radar designed to detect any artillery activity. From that moment, the system began scanning the sector, waiting for the next launch. As soon as the Vilkha-M began preparing for the main strike, the Zoopark-1M locked onto their position and transmitted the data to Russian artillery. The 6-minute countdown began at that moment, the point where electronic hunting turned into a contest of power. On the Russian side stood the Zoopark, a counter-battery radar that had become the extra sense of the artillery forces. Mounted on armored vehicles, it scans the skies and calculates within seconds the trajectory of any incoming rocket or shell. A single launch is enough for the system to trace its origin and immediately send back the coordinates. For those on the receiving end, this means retaliation could arrive before there is even time to change position. The Russian response came with maximum force. The Zoopark was linked to the BM-30 Smerch multiple rocket launcher, a massive system equipped with 12 tubes capable of firing 300mm rockets within seconds. Each rocket can be fitted with different types of warheads: fragmentation, incendiary, or cluster munitions. In open terrain, a single strike is enough to turn entire hectares into smoking craters. This destructive power has made the Smerch one of the most feared systems in the Russian arsenal. But Ukraine was betting on a far more advanced response: the Vilkha-M. It was developed by the Luch Design Bureau in Kyiv. Although it originated from an old Soviet project, it was completely modernized to become a new generation precision weapon. Weighing about 2 tons and carrying a high explosive warhead, it stands out not only for its power, but also for its advanced technology. The secret lies in its navigation system. Unlike many missiles that rely on a single method, the Vilkha-M uses 3 simultaneously: GPS, GLONASS, and its own inertial system. This means that even if one signal is jammed, the others continue to function and keep the missile on course. This redundancy makes the Vilkha-M almost immune to interference, and unlike older weapons that miss by dozens of meters, it has a minimal margin of error, precise enough to strike fortified depots or critical sites with accuracy. Allowing the launch of these missiles was unacceptable for Russia, as the likelihood of the target in Kartitsk being destroyed was very high. Inside the Vilkha-M cabin, time seemed to run twice as fast. The normal programming process would take 3 minutes, but the crew knew they had barely half of that. Every coordinate had to be entered with precision. At 22:32, the situation grew even worse. Russian systems began jamming the GPS signal. Without external data, the crew was forced to rely on preloaded information and manual input, a risky method that increased the margin of error with every second lost. With the countdown underway, there was no time for protocols. The firing sequence, which was supposed to include a 45-second safety gap between each missile, was shortened to just 30 seconds. The first rocket tore across the sky, lighting up the darkness. Then came the second, the third, and finally the fourth. Each missile was an act of desperation. The more they fired, the clearer their position became to the Russians, who were already prepared to strike back. Indeed, the sounds of Russian rockets began to be heard, first distant, then closer and closer. It was proof that the Russians had not only detected the launch site, but had already activated their batteries. With the launch of the 4th missile, there was no time to see the result. The driver accelerated, and just seconds later, the first Smerch rocket struck the spot where they had been, exploding only 400 meters from their original position. The escape unfolded literally under fire. amid explosions lighting up the Ukrainian night sky. In the air, the decisive battle was beginning. 4 Ukrainian missiles advanced toward Kursk, breaking through the Russian defensive network that had been built like a steel belt. This multi-layered barrier combined different systems: the modern Tor M2, designed to intercept short-range targets; the Pantsir S-1, which integrates automatic cannons with guided missiles; and even the old Soviet Shilka, still used as the final coverage line. On the map, the scene resembled a mosaic of overlapping zones, each one ready to detect, track, and destroy any intruder. Before the missiles reached the depot, the Tor M2 radar picked up the first signals and launched 2 interceptors in succession. The trajectory seemed certain, but at 22:42, the unexpected happened. The Ukrainian missile executed a sudden maneuver, changing its course in an unforeseen way. This was not a random reaction, but a pre-programmed action by Ukrainian engineers. The technique, known as JINK, introduces automatic evasive maneuvers at the exact moment enemy radar calculates the point of impact. The result was that the Russian interceptors lost their target and exploded into empty air. Even after being damaged by shrapnel, the missile recalculated its route through its inertial system and continued toward the target. The other missiles arrived from different angles almost simultaneously, forcing the Tor and Pantsir radars to split their attention and track targets that were not moving in straight lines. What had been a coordinated defense turned into a chaotic electronic chase. The scene in the sky was dramatic: glowing trajectories from every direction, interceptor missiles climbing in vain, and precision weapons continuing their push toward the depot. In the end, the 4 missiles broke through the final defensive line and struck Kursk. From afar, drones captured them as glowing points that turned into towering columns of fire. The first blast hit the outer warehouses, setting off a chain of consecutive explosions. Seconds later, thermal cameras recorded the most terrifying scene: the collapse of the underground depot packed with supplies in a massive detonation that lit up the horizon. Around 3,000 tons of ammunition were destroyed in a single strike, enough to fuel weeks of continuous shelling. This attack did not only cause material losses, but also delivered a psychological blow. Even the most fortified depots were no longer safe from Ukraine's new generation of weapons. The Ukrainian crew miraculously survived the Russian retaliation, but they completed what had seemed like an impossible mission, turning an operation doomed to fail into a massive strategic strike. The message was clear: on the modern battlefield, brute force alone is not enough. It is technological intelligence and tactical audacity that determine the outcome. The clash between missile and shield ended with precision triumphing over saturation. And this was only one chapter of a hidden war unfolding before our eyes.